The Memory of Love, Chapter 33. The place name is familiar. This new route to the mental hospital is one Iliana has told Adrian about. It winds up the hill, past the villas of the wealthy, the army barracks, and also this familiar name on a hand-painted sign for a hairdressing salon. Because he is in no hurry, Adrian turns the vehicle around the roundabout in the direction the sign points and heads down a track alongside a petrol station, where a number of young men are gathered in the shade of a high wall. They stare through the driver's window as he passes, sullen and silent. The track narrows, the houses press in upon the street. He is driving slowly now. People make way for him. He pulls over for another car, easing his way around the corner of a building that juts into the road. Waiting for the other car to pass, he sees the building is a covered market. Nearby, a woman sits behind a tray of fish, waving intermittently at the flies in the air. A pair of featherless chickens race in front of the car. Now the road has opened out. In front of him is a dirt football ground, a tall tree, and what looks like a school building on the far side. A game is about to begin. People are gathered in the road that borders the ground. A couple of them wave at him, indicating there's no way through. One man in a long tunic approaches the vehicle, taps on the glass and points down another road. Adrian takes it without knowing where it leads. He is beginning to regret turning off the main road. At a crossroads at the end of the street, the road to the right leads to a church and a dead end. Straight ahead, the road appears too narrow for a vehicle to pass, so Adrian turns left down the hill. The track is badly rattled now, with deep channels on either side. A pair of school children stand back to let him pass, their heels at the edge of the ditch. 50 yards on there is another left turn, and Adrian takes it, then changes his mind and decides to turn back. There is just enough space to execute a 3-point turn, and he does so badly, tires spinning on the gravel road, clutch whining. As he prepares to set off again, he notices the house. Small by the standards of the villas he passed on the road up the hill, it sits behind an iron gate. There is a doorway reached by a short flight of stairs. The walls are streaked dark green by water and pale by the sun. An overburdened orange tree grows in the front. It is now exactly as he imagined. For one, it sits higher on the land, but still there is enough for him to recognize it. Though it is shrouded by trees, has not been painted in many years. This is the pink house. Adrian climbs down and leaves the vehicle door open behind him. He walks up to the gates and looks through the railings. There is a side gate which looks like it might lead to a garden. It is hard to tell whether the house is occupied or abandoned. Such is the state of neglect of so many buildings in the city. The front gate is closed, and Adrian stops short of pushing it open. He turns away and climbs back inside the vehicle. At the end of the street, he stops for the same pair of school children, a boy and a younger girl. They do not cross the road, but sidle down the length of the car, eyeing Adrian as they do so. He smiles at them, and they do not smile back. He waves, and the boy, who might be 6, waves too. Adrian watches as they enter through the gate of the pink house. Mid-afternoon, he is doing the rounds with Iliana. "How is Mama Kay?" "She is well." "I liked her," said Iliana. "And she liked you." Adrian is aware of Iliana's brown eyes watching him. He does not meet her gaze, but pretends to peruse the notes in his hand. "Be careful, won't you?" He turns over a leaf, says as casually as he can, "What's that supposed to mean?" Even he can hear the false note in his own voice. "You know very well what I mean, my dear. You are a psychologist." Just then, Salia approaches and nothing more is said. Today, several patients are ready for discharge. Among them, Abdullah, the young man whom Adrian brought to the hospital and who in turn first brought Adrian. He is clean now, drug-free. For the duration of his stay, Attila has signed his release. Salia has arranged a final consultation between Abdullah and Adrian. Adrian is touched by the thought, for Abdullah has been under Attila's care. He thanks Salia, who nods formally. Before retreating from the ward, his shoes sign upon the gritty lino floor. The young man sitting on a chair before Adrian is a different soul to the person Adrian brought to the hospital. He has no memory of that first day when Adrian collected him from the police station and brought him to the hospital. The important thing, says Adrian, is how you feel now. I feel well, doctor. I feel well in my body. He is sitting with his shoulders bent forward, his hands buried between his thighs. His voice contains a slight tremor, a hesitancy. Otherwise, he appears perfectly normal, if a little nervous. And your head? Yes, I'm well in my head, except sometimes I feel afraid. What is it you are afraid of? Can you tell me? Things in my dreams. He shakes his head hard. That should improve. Who are you going to? Do you have family? Abdullah nods his head. His family were the ones who had delivered him to the police station. As Adrian recalls, the police suggested Abdullah had become violent. How will you get home? Mr. Salia has given me money for that poda. Your family can't come and collect you. My mother has passed on. My father is working. At the door, Adrian gives Abdullah some of his own money and watches the young man walk to the front gate. He possesses not a single item of luggage, nothing but the clothes on his back. He has spent several weeks in chains, received 3 meals a day. A few sessions with Attila is all the rehabilitation he's undergone. Now he is being discharged. Later, talking to Ileana, watching her perform her tea-making ceremony, Adrian asks, what will happen to him? Ileana shrugs and smokes. If he manages to stay off drugs, he might be all right. There's no follow-up then. Even if you could get people to attend, who would run the sessions? I could. You'll be gone in a few months. The cigarette in the corner of Ileana's mouth bobs up and down as she speaks. Adrian watches the length of ash grow, drooping as it increases in length. Just as he is about to push an ashtray towards her, Ileana removes the cigarette and expertly flicks the ash out of the window. Come on, let's drink this in the garden. Sitting beside him on the bench, Ileana says, there are places he can go. The born-again churches are having a boom time. No surprises there. Same goes for the traditional healers. People believe in them. That's what is important. Though the traditional healers are really quite interesting. Attila has a lot of respect for them. Some of the antipsychotic drugs we use, they were onto hundreds of years ago. Really? Like what, for example? I mean, what drugs? Resapine is one I know of. I didn't know that, said Adrian. No, well, says Ileana in a voice that says she is not surprised. We call them witch doctors. To Ileana, Adrian had made no mention of the fact he was meeting Mama Kay later in the day. She is reading now as she waits for him, her head bent over the open book, an empty bitter lemon bottle on the table before her, sitting in the clear sunlight at a table with 2 students. For a moment, to Adrian, it looks as though she could be anywhere in the world. He slows his pace to give himself time to look at her. She is unaware of him, lost in the pages of her book. Today she is wearing a fitted print blouse, which exposes her collarbones, and a matching skirt reaching down to her ankles. On her feet, a pair of tooled leather sandals. Her hair is tied up high and held back by a scarf. She bites the edges of one thumb uses the other to follow her progress. Down the pages, she is smiling slightly, and he knows, though he cannot see it, that her front teeth overlap very slightly. Her eyebrows are long rings. There is a mole, a concentration of darkness set against dark skin, high on her cheekbone, and another below the corner of her mouth. She is not conventionally pretty, the kind of woman Lisa would have called handsome, damning with faint praise, a beauty considered to possess too much strength. Suddenly she snorts, laughs out loud, and looks up. Good book. She raises the volume to show him the cover. 3 Men in a Boat. Jerome K. Jerome. About the last thing he was expecting. Have you read it? She asks. Not since I was 14. Which bit were you reading? When they stopped for lunch and Kempton Park, and the man tries to move them on. That's the part, Harris. He's something. I tell you. She reads a section aloud and begins to laugh all over again. Adrian watches her, smiles and laughs too. She slips the volume into her bag. They walk away from the cafe, past some of the university buildings. Adrian sees painted signs to various faculties, administration buildings, the amphitheater, when Mama Kay mentioned she would be coming to the university today. Adrian had ventured his interest in seeing it. As they walk, she offered him a few items of information, points out a building or two. They wind their way up here to where the high-rise buildings give way to older 2-story blocks, and finally to an area dominated by trees and lawns, and set amidst them a scattering of bungalows. This is where the faculty lived. Nice, isn't it? It is. I bet you are surprised. Yes, he confesses. The grounds are arresting. He isn't sure now what he was expecting. It wasn't the university he'd been thinking about all day. Did you study here? Yes. They pass a small stream, the water slipping down a bank of rock and pooling at the roadside. Children are playing in it. They stop to watch Adrian pass by. Here we are, Mama Kay says. They have arrived at a curve in the road where the railing has been broken. Adrian looks around but sees nothing, just the hillside behind them and the trees in front. Mama Kay steps through the break in the railing. Adrian follows her along a narrow path. After about 20 yards, Mama Kay stops. Adrian, concentrating upon his footing, almost bumps into her. He steadies himself, brushing her shoulder. Despite her clothing, the touch runs through him like a current. She turns to him and smiles. Okay? He is standing so close to her. For a moment, all he can see are the flecks of brown in her irises. Her eyes momentarily in shadow as the wind moves a branch above her. He swallows and nods. He is filled with self-consciousness, aware of his own breathing. She turns away and he follows her gaze to the view through the trees. The city reaches out to the edge of the sea. The red, brown tin roofs of houses, the minarets of the mosques, the steepled roofs and spirals of the churches, which dwarf the houses and are in turn dwarfed by the massive warehouses of the port. The sky is streaked with cloud. The horizon is lost in haze. The view of the city is one he has never seen before. He is surprised at the scale of it. Here, the sounds of the city are muted. It is cooler. A faint breeze touches him like damp fingers. His heart is thumping absurdly within his chest. Many hours into the night now, they are in her apartment. They sit with the door open, despite the mosquitoes. In this place, he can hear the nighttime sounds of the city, uninterrupted by the thrum of a generator from far away. Floating upon the dense darkness comes the sound of late-night prayer. So too does the bars width of a bar lower down the hill. A blue strobe light marking time. Close at hand, the sound of people walking through the narrow streets behind the house. Voices and steps rebound on the concrete walls. Closer still, the sounds of the roasting birds in the dovecote. He dreams, says Mama Kay of her neighbor, the dove's honor, and drinks too much. She stands up and stretches her fingertips, touch the ceiling. She lets her own swing back down. She is telling the story of her neighbor. 2 days ago, he came over, banged on the gate, and shouted at me. Why? He said I had insulted him. He came around to tell me I was a bad person, she laughs. What had you said? Nothing. He dreamt it all. At first he wouldn't believe it, but the others told him it was true. They'd been in the dream too, so he had to believe them. That must have been quite confusing for him. Yes, I'm not sure he worked out what was real and what was not. Poor man. Imagine having us hopping in and out of your subconscious. Does it worry you? No. She shakes her head. He was all right before. He will be again. A lot of people here believe in dreams. So do you, don't you? Psychologists? Some branches work to interpret them. Yes, says Adrian. He would not have seen it like that until now. But he cannot say she is wrong. Every day he talks to his patients at the asylum after asking them about their dreams. What's the difference, really? She is absolutely right. The one bottle is empty and without wine to refill their glasses. Adrian fears the end of the evening. He tells himself he should leave soon anyway, as he has many times in the last few hours, without ever feeling the slightest desire to do so. Coffee, more wine. The excuses eked out over the hours of darkness are running out. The electricity failed early in the evening. The 2 remaining candles burn low, sending shadows shooting up the walls. He watches now as Mama Kay goes to fetch another candle, searching around the apartment. I swear I bought more. Sometimes the others come in and take them. If the candle supply lands out, thinks Adrian, then he will have no option but to leave. Ah, good, I'd hidden them, I thought so. Adrian exhales. On a side table there is a photograph. He leans to look at it. Mama Kay and 2 other girls. He recognizes one of them as Mary, a slimmer, more youthful Mary. Our invasion uniform, says Mama Kay. That picture was taken right in the middle of things. What's with the jeans? He says. We wore jeans under our dresses. There was a time we dressed like that every day because nobody knew when they were coming. One day the radio would say the rebels had been pushed back to the border. Another day people arrived in the city saying they were at Potloko. We stopped believing the government. We wore blue jeans. She pauses and then she gives a short, strange laugh, as if remembering something absurd or possibly painful. Still, he doesn't understand. Mama Kay turns to look at him. Have you ever tried to get a pair of tight jeans off in a hurry? It was the only thing we could think of to do, to stop them raping us. Well, to make it harder. Adrian wants to ask her all about it. Everything that happened, he cannot imagine what it was like. The powerlessness. In that respect, war was worse for civilians, for at least the fighters were given the opportunity to act. Civilians were like rats in a barrel. Mama Kay picks up the photograph, looks at it for a moment and sets it back down. Sarian's gone now. Where to? She makes it sound as though she is dead. Holland. They have 24-hour electricity. Can you imagine? He can, but he doesn't say so. Instead, he asks, wouldn't you like to live somewhere else? He is thinking of England, perhaps. No, she shakes her head. You could do so much more. Your music. I'm happy here, believe it or not. 1 hour later and 1 inch of candle left, Adrian gets up to go. Mama Kay walks with him to his car. It is pitch dark. His shoes hit the concrete with what seems to him a remarkable amount of noise. She is barefoot and silent, curled up in the yard. The dogs raise their heads and watch his progress through opal-scent eyes. For a moment, the moon shines through the clouds and he sees the outline of his vehicle ahead of him. He is not at all sure of the whereabouts of Mama Kay. He aims straight for the car, placing his feet with more confidence than he feels. Tries to remember the location of steps and plant tabs. A few seconds later, he collides with the car, takes a backward step and turns, disoriented. In that moment, Mama Kay steps into his arms. At the touch of her, his erection, over which he has maintained uncertain control all evening, rises unchecked. He steps backwards, hard into the car, and comes to rest with his back against the door. Now he cannot see Mama Kay anymore. He opens his mouth to say something, but changes his mind. He reaches into the dark for Mama Kay. Moaning, he rolls over and places an arm across Mama Kay, who is still sleeping by his side. His hand comes to rest upon her breast. He closes his eyes and inhales. One by one, whatever thoughts were in his mind drop out of sight. He begins to move against her, feels the energy change in her body as she crosses from sleep into wakefulness, the faint tension that arises in her muscles. She turns around. He moves down her body, feeling the resistance of the sweat, damp sheet, the heat from her. The night before, he had done nothing but hold her at first. Now he lingers over every detail of her as they make love. She is relaxed and unhurried, quiet, without vanity or false modesty, laughing when her body makes an overseen sound, quite unlike any woman he has known. And later she wanders naked, making fresh coffee, rearranging items, bringing things back to bed, a CD cover, a saved newspaper article. She scarcely stops talking and does not offer Adrian a robe, so that he remains trapped until he finally frees himself from his own self-consciousness and the bed. In the night, he'd got up to pee and found the bathroom full of plants. Now, Mama Kay fetches water and they wash each other, standing on a bed of white pebbles in a vine-enclosed shower in the yard. The man next door comes out to feed his birds. Rice clatters down on the tin roof. The birds squabble over it. Mama Kay fries plantains. They eat with their fingers. Adrian burns his tongue. An orange-headed lizard approaches them with a mixture of caution and inquisitiveness. Mama Kay blows on a scrap of plantain and throws it. The lizard darts forward and collects the trophy on its black tongue. "Is this where you grew up?" he asks. She shakes her head. "Where then?" "On the campus. Later, my father built his own house." "On the campus? Where we were yesterday?" "Yes," she nods. She is looking at him, frowning lightly, seemingly faintly bemused by his questions. "My father taught there. He is a professor of history." And then Adria realizes he has been slow, stupidly slow. That first day, leaving the hospital, he'd been in a hurry. He nodded at her and she looked back at him. The glance had stayed with him the whole of the day. She'd been talking to Baba Gale. Baba Gale was Elias Cole's manservant. At first, Adrian had taken Mama Kay for another servant. Elias Cole was the reason he had gone to meet her on campus, the reason he'd given himself background context on a client. He hadn't allowed himself to think. Of course, Mama Kay is Elias Cole's daughter. For a moment, Adrian is quiet. Then he tells Mama Kay about Lisa. "I know," says Mama Kay. "How do you know?" he asks. "Not how," she replies, looking at him. "Not how, but what? What I know is that you won't be staying," she shrugs. "So I suppose the exact reason doesn't really matter."